Welcome to the monthly Supply Chain and Logistics Institute Lunch and Learn. And thank you for those who have joined us today. And thank you for those who are listening later on. We're thrilled today to be joined by a longtime friend and supporter of SCL, Alex Rhodeen. And Alex and I are going to have a nice conversation around how supply chain startups are solving real world problems. And Alex is a founder, is plugged into that ecosystem. And so hopefully he and I can kind of delve into that in a way that can shed some light for our audience. So Alex, welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Really happy to be here.
Absolutely. Well, Alex, I know some of our audience knows you, but I'd love for you to kind of, and I think you've got a slide to facilitate this, just a little bit more about your story and your work historically and what you're doing these days.
Absolutely. After college, I wasn't sure what to do, so I joined the Army. And when I left active duty, I went home and found myself as an employee wanted a startup. That wasn't the plan, but it's how it worked out. And I've stayed in startups in some form or fashion ever since. And what I quickly found is there were similarities between my experience in the Army and startup life. And so these are five things that I love to highlight. I wrote a piece on this for Hippopotamus, which I'm happy to share the link. But every day is different. Know the mission and your role in accomplishing the mission. The task you don't want to do, no one else wants to do either, so just do it. In the absence of orders, take initiative, and you must stay flexible physically and emotionally, or you will break. So my brain resonated with what I found in startups and what I enjoyed about the military. And there's plenty of things about both that I don't love, even to this day. But it's been an incredible journey. And so I'm excited to have today to chat with you all. As Chris mentioned, we're just going to talk about startups and particularly in the supply chain space. We hear so much about AI, it's everywhere, but how to deploy it? What does it mean? Is it taking my job? All these questions are floating out there. And one of the things that I appreciate about the work we're doing in supply chain is there are a lot of deployable uses for AI today that will make your life easier, make your time, make better use of your time, and take remedial tasks that must be done and are mission critical, but optimize them and have them done in a way that frees you up to work on tasks that are much more valuable to the organization. So, uh, very quickly, ATDC is the state of Georgia supply chain, is the early stage tech incubator. And we've been around since 1980. We were created by the state legislature based here at Georgia Tech since inception. And we serve the entire state looking for early stage founders, solving pain points with technology solutions. So you will see us running around the state, helping entrepreneurs wherever we can find them, with our particular focus being on technology founders. We have a supply chain vertical sponsored by the Home Depot. We currently have within that 22 portfolio companies. The revenue in 2024 was 14 million. Equity funding, so investment was 11 million, and we had two exits via acquisition. So very excited about the work we've done within the portfolio. We use the term portfolio at ATDC, but we do not invest because about half of our budget does come from the state. We're not allowed to invest in these companies, but it also means that when we're working with these companies, as we provide coaching, connections, and community, we are offering them a view that comes from our own experience as entrepreneurs and founders. And we are not trying to guide them into a decision that may benefit our position on the cap table. So I think that that ability to be candid and to have the founders know that we're not trying to influence a financial outcome based on the conversations we're having is an incredible value proposition for ATDC. I have co-founded two companies. One went through ATDC 10 years ago, and we were acquired by Geodis. I did time at Geodis and learned a lot. First and only time I've been part of a big corporation. I guess the Army is kind of a big corporation. But I have then, post Geodis, started another company. Did not go as well, but of course, you learn a lot more from losing than you do from winning. And came back to ATDC in 2022 to lead the supply chain vertical and always love partnering with the great team at SCL. So that is a quick overview on what we're doing. And Chris, I'm ready to rock and roll. I do have some more slides on AI that I can get into, but happy to dive into questions or however you would like to roll this out for everyone.
Yeah, you and I know, I've joined SCL now about a year and a half ago. In my work post Coca-Cola, I was advising some founders, so I've had my own, limited experience set, but closer to tech, the momentum feels positive. I know investors, I know startups closer to our ecosystem. What's in your mind today? What's the state of the ecosystem around startups in tech in and around Georgia Tech right now? If you compare it over the last 3 years, how's it looking these days?
So the first thing you'll likely hear is that no one's investing, companies can't raise capital, it's brutal out there. And absolutely, when money was effectively free with 0% interest, you saw a lot more investment because there were no consequences to good or bad decisions. You could take a risk. I say if you get off a plane in Vegas, someone hands you $1,000 and says you don't have to pay it back. It's unlikely you're going to move that $1,000 into your savings account. So that was the mindset. And now that the bill has come due, investors are retreating and being more strategic. They're going through diligence in ways they simply were not a few years ago. Founders think this is a bad thing because they remember the outrageous valuations. They remember when money was flowing and deals were happening left and right. But I'm a capitalist and I want smart solutions, and capital will continue to exist for smart solutions. So I believe in a market where you're seeing fewer deals, less capital flowing into investment in early stage companies. That's a good thing. It forces you as a founder to make a better solution, to better understand the pain that you're solving for your customers, and to really dig into that versus, well, someone gave me a bunch of money, so I guess I'm doing the right thing. Haven't really stopped to find out if I actually am. So I'm in favor of this. I think it's a good thing. So capital is absolutely constrained. The opportunity, as I see it, as there is uncertainty across the economy, uh, it means opportunities where maybe a new customer for a startup isn't willing to write a big check, but they're willing to say, hey, we'll do a pilot with you. We will give you access to data. As we know, data is literally the only way that AI works. And so there are opportunities that are not the conventional, we raised a bunch of money or got a large check from our first customer, but you're getting that market feedback, that downrange feedback that is so valuable to early stage companies. So to me, the smart solutions will continue to go out and thrive. You may have to work a little harder, but you also won't get that false validation of a giant check at an unrealistic valuation with no actual product behind it.
So I think of a couple scenarios, and I'm exposed to our students, I'm exposed to some of our faculty, and there clearly are good ideas still coming. So for that case, is it, hey, if you've got a legitimate real idea, you're going to have to be better at bootstrapping for a period of time to curate that idea before you get somebody's attention. So that's that case. Another company that I think I'm biased because I really like what they do. They're having to be much more focused on how do we become cash flow positive on our own because we truly believe in what we're doing, and we're just going to turn this into a sustainable business until somebody really sees us, right? What are the tactics that you see people who are in these different phases given this landscape you're talking about?
Well, Chris, you're 100% right. Revenue is everything. When times are tough, you can always sell your way out of your problems. And so the companies that are laser focused on revenue and understanding they need to get their foot in the door, start with a solution that may not utilize every aspect of what you've built, but it solves a pain point today for your customer. Prove that that pain can go away if they use your solution, and then you can grow within their organization. Land and expand is the term that we use. So, the founders who are being disciplined, who are recognizing that it truly is not so much what you've built, but what you've deployed and the impact it's having. That's the real opportunity. I would say, in this age where IPOs just aren't happening the way they were, you meet founders now. No one says they're focused on IPOing. Uh, and what I am seeing is that, particularly within supply chain, companies that set out to, for example, be a lightweight ERP. This is one of the companies that was acquired, that was part of ATDC. Uh, it's been acquired in the past year. But what they really solved that made them incredibly valuable to a much larger organization was they were able to provide transparency into landed cost in a way that other solutions simply could not. And that value to the company that wound up acquiring them was tremendous. That company recognized we could maybe figure out how they did it and we could maybe build it ourselves, but this works beautifully. Let's just acquire this. So I'm seeing a lot of supply chain acquisition happen in the space where the founders set out to solve all the problems in the supply chain, found one that they solved well, and that is their value proposition. So I'm also encouraging companies to think small and understand how you can solve an incredibly painful but not particularly broad problem, because that will demonstrate a value to an organization where they'll say, we need to have you, we'll buy you, we'll partner with you, whatever it takes, because you're solving this. And as you can imagine, supply chain visibility into landed cost, particularly in an age of uncertainty around tariffs, is mission critical to profitability.
So you mentioned a point, and I've seen this with a couple of the companies that I advise. They all want to get in with the big company because they feel like that'll solve their problem. That's difficult. Many cases, there's 1,000 small startups who want to get in with the big company. So standing out from the crowd is a challenge. But I have seen situations where the larger companies just want to say, let's see these ideas and then let's go see if we can do this ourselves. And then the company's kind of at minimum waiting till the company proves they can or can't do it themselves. But how does that dynamic, is that a common dynamic that you see? And how do you coach people to think about that?
So part of the challenge is, if we're, and let's just use Home Depot as an example. Home Depot has thousands of stores and a thriving e-commerce business, and their model is to sell you supplies to build stuff. That's what they do. And they need technology. They want smart technology. Culturally, Home Depot tends to build internally, but they want to be aware. They've been a great partner in meeting and giving feedback to the startups in our supply chain portfolio. But Home Depot can't afford cease operations in the event that they partner with a company that can't manage the scale of an enterprise. So those can be very hesitant and want to see that you implement, and they roll this out across their physical locations and roll this out across their e-commerce platforms, that it will actually work. So I encourage companies, you think getting Home Depot will solve all your problems. It's the start of your problems, because you can't imagine the scale at which they operate and they have no margin for error. So your partnerships with those smaller companies where there is some margin for error, not that those companies don't want it to work, but they have a very different model than Home Depot. So learning your lessons at a smaller scale and just the appreciation of what it's like to work with an enterprise company. Excuse me. So that's the biggest challenge. Is founders think, oh, I've built a great solution. It's perfect for Home Depot. They just need to give us money and they can use it. That's not how it works. So I always encourage, start smaller, because the crawl, walk, run model exists for a reason. And all too often, founders say, I built it, it must work, let's run.
So if I'm a student and I've got a cool idea from my capstone and I'm choosing, should I, go get a traditional job, quote unquote, and or take a shot on my startup in today's environment, would you say go for it, or would you say keep that idea in the box, go get the real money, get a job, get some cash or whatever? What's your coaching today? Is it any different than it would be normally for people looking to dive in?
My advice is going to remains the same, whether, regardless of macroeconomic factors. My advice is the same. If you're a Georgia Tech graduate or a graduate of any other of the great schools in this state, let's say you're 22 years old. Let's go with that. If there's a time to take a risk, it's probably then. If there's a time to learn things, try things out, my presumption is you probably don't have a wife and kids that are counting on you. You probably don't have a whole bunch of bills. Well, probably have a lot of student debt, but beyond that, this is the time because if you're walking out the door with a degree from Georgia Tech, you're going to be okay. You will find a job. But starting something and the lessons learned to me is invaluable. My joke whenever Scheller students come through, I was not a great student. Anyone who's met me thinks that's pretty apparent. My wife is an incredible student. She got her MBA. I tell people I got mine in the Army. They don't actually give out MBAs, but I learned a lot about group dynamics, goal setting, leadership from the Army. My joke to the Scheller students is so you wanted to read about it and not do it. I push people do it because you can fail, it'll be okay. You'll learn so much. Says, hey, you know what? It really is important to me to take a paycheck, to get some stability, to build up my resources. That's fine too, because being an entrepreneur is not for everyone. I used to be an evangelist and tell everyone they should do it. Then I saw a lot of people do it and they just didn't have the appetite for it. So now I give the worst case scenario, something from my own experience. It's 3 in the morning. You got a kid and a dog, and you're the sole provider of resources for them. Payroll is due the next day. You don't have the money in the bank. You're not getting paid because you're trying to build a business. How do you solve that? And if people look like they're going to throw up, I say maybe entrepreneurship is not for you. If I see the wheels turning and they're trying to think it through, then I say maybe this could be for you. But it's a hard road, and ignorance is bliss. And a lot of founders come to me and say, if I'd known it was going to be this hard, I never would have started. So uh, it is good at times that they just charge into it. So I would say if you're fresh out of Georgia Tech, you've got an idea. Now is the time to take a shot. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but what you'll learn from it is invaluable. And I promise you will be okay. You will be able to earn a paycheck because you can't always go to Kroger and put cans of peas on shelves. I've done it myself. If you got to pay the bills, there's always an ability to pay the bills.
So what do you say? We've got a question in the chat from a student who has a startup. So then it's I've got a great idea, but how do I get it in front of people, right? When you're at the bottom of that startup food chain and you're new, how do you even get in front of somebody to even create the opportunity for a proof of concept or a pilot? So very, very nascent. What are first things first for these folks?
So, first things first, it's great to have an idea that you believe in and that you think is a smart idea. That is awesome. Too often people come and say, well, I talk to my friends and family, and they all think it's a great idea. I would hope your friends and family are telling you it's a great idea. It doesn't cost them anything, and they wouldn't be a good family member or friend if they said it was a terrible idea. Customer discovery is where everything begins. And that is the difficult, painful process of talking to strangers about your idea and getting their candid feedback. And through that process, if you're, for example, catering a solution to better manage pickups and drop offs in a warehousing facility, if you can talk to a dispatcher or the scheduler who's handling all these inbound and outbound shipments and the trucks and everything that relates to that, if you can sit down with them and share, hey, what would you think of a solution that enabled this? And then hear their feedback and not have it be a do they think it's a good idea or bad idea, but what they're really saying. And then use that as an opening to ask questions to understand what their real pain is. If you can put yourself through that exercise, and I tell first time founders, any founder who's got an idea, you need to have at least 200 conversations as part of customer discovery. And the truth is, 90% of founders skip over that because it's incredibly hard. But that's not strategy for success. And if you can put yourself through the rigors of customer discovery and hear the feedback and not believe that your idea is perfect and it's just a matter of the world understanding it, then you will be so much further along than all the other founders who probably have a similar solution who didn't put in the time for customer discovery. And I often meet founders who won't do customer discovery. They know they've got the perfect solution. They're right. The entire world is wrong, and they're just waiting for the world to realize that they're wrong. That is not a setup for success. But those 200 conversations as part of your customer discovery is absolutely the first step in a successful journey.
Superb. All right, let's start pivoting into the world of AI. And, I think about it myself. particularly in now that we've got the generative AI kind of world, um, this is a game changer in some respects, in a lot of respects, right? I grew up in the analog world of supply chain, so I was thrilled to get Gen 1 digital tools, but I also grew up in the world of Excel and in the world of enterprise software. And Excel was whatever I could do on my own until it got too big for Excel. And enterprise software was mostly big promise and a lot of under delivery in terms of actually helping me do the job that I have. So now that we're in this world, you know, AI is very tantalizing. So let's kind of dive into this and kind of give me your framing for how you think about AI and supply chain, and then I think we'll run down that path a bit.
Excellent. Very quickly, I've got the slide up, but I need simple explanations. That's how my brain works. So, for anyone on the call, like our dear friend Pascal, who's been working in AI for 40 years, I'm not trying to minimize the work you've done or the complexity of AI, but I start with people ask me all the time, what is supply chain? For me, it's anything involved in the process of moving something from A to B. Uber is supply chain to me. So, very broad definition there. Artificial intelligence, it's teaching a computer to think like a human. And then machine learning is teaching the computer to draw conclusions from what it's learned. So, agentic AI is the phase that we're in, particularly with supply chain. And AI is so broad and runs so deep, and AI has been around for 70 years, and yet we're still at the beginning. So there is this rush, and certainly we've seen, back to the investment standpoint, people rushing to declare a winner and placing their bets. And that's fine, but we're a long way from knowing how this is all going to unfold. I mean, the internet is still something we are figuring out and reconciling. I don't think there's anyone who would declare that the internet is without question always a great thing. And if you don't believe me, check out social media. uh, so we're still learning. AI is not going to step in tomorrow and do everything. But there are deployments today, particularly within supply chain, that do bring value. I mentioned earlier, taking those repetitive but mission critical tasks. For example, a delivery has arrived, there's a bill of lading. You driver knows, hey, I got to snap a picture of the signed bill of lading. We're still talking about a piece of paper. And I think most people on this call would agree supply chain globally still runs primarily on phone calls, spreadsheets, and email. So there are amazing warehouses that are fully automated. There's robotics, there's the deployment of AI, there's all this great technology. But the typical operations from a supply chain organization standpoint is still phone calls, spreadsheets, and email. That's how it's managed. So driver snaps the picture of the signed bill of lading. Now that bill of lading needs to get to the customer. Process now, I email it or text it to the dispatcher who then takes it and sends it off to the customer. An important task, customer needs to know, hey, your delivery arrived as promised. Uh, but that's not a task that has to involve humans. And this is where agentic AI comes in. Driver snaps the picture of the bill of lading, sends it in to the email address, and that email is received. And the AI agent says, okay, we got a bill of lading and it's for Chris Gaffney's company. I'm going to notify Chris and I'm going to forward this bill of lading. And then Chris sees it and says, wait a second, this was delivered to 123 Maple and it's supposed to go to 321 Maple. Now, Chris can respond to the email and the agent can start to make some decisions saying, oh, we have an issue. This needs to go to Alex, who needs to get involved and figure out why this went to the wrong place. So it's stepping in and solving those things where a human is doing it today, but that human has much greater value than sitting there and forwarding emails. So let the AI agents handle it and then bring in the humans to solve the much more valuable things, good or bad.
So, as I think about this in the context of a supply chain startup, I feel like AI can be a blessing and a curse, um, in a variety of ways, right? It can be a blessing because it gives them access to tools and capability. They don't have to hire 100 coders, and theoretically can help them scale their resources. I've heard somebody claim they want to do a startup with no people and only AI. Whether that's hype, we can debate that. But on the flip side, if I'm a customer, and somebody comes to me with a new idea, I have a sense that some of them will say, well, why do I need to hire this startup? I'll just I'll have AI do this myself or whatever, right? I mean, how are you thinking about that kind of, at least in my mind, kind of a catch 22 there for startup folks?
You're absolutely right, Chris. It's a blessing and a curse. So the fact that you can take tasks and do them rapidly and do them well in a fraction of the time deploying AI allows you to build your solution faster. It also means that the other 999 startups trying to do something similar can build faster too. So there is the question of, have I built something truly unique, or is it just something that everyone else is able to do? So that's one of the challenges with AI, is if you can do it with AI, someone else can too. And so for the founders who are thinking about it, and by the way, I love the startup with no humans involved. At some point, someone's got to buy the thing. Maybe I haven't checked the news in the past 2 hours. Maybe AI is paying real money for solutions these days, but I still think it's Mark Zuckerberg paying real money for AI solutions these days. So there's going to be a human involved, whether it's your customer, whether it's someone who is actually using the solution, saying, "Wait, this doesn't work at all." Uh, it remains the reality of AI. If you go to any of the LLMs and put in your question, it's still caveat emptor, right? I can confirm today the Falcons are in first place in the NFC South. They may not be after Sunday, but I can validate it today, so I can spend the rest of my time telling everyone. But there'll be new data and new information after they actually play a game. So you've got to consider the source and what information you're getting back. And that to me is really a critical piece of AI. Is it will do a lot, but you have to have human in the loop. You have to think these things through. And ultimately, you're going to be selling it to a human. There's going to be a human who's deciding on it. So you need that human interaction. So consider AI a resource, a tool, a force multiplier, but not a solution.
So I went to one of the large industry conferences early in the year, and that was Manifest out in Vegas, and there were hundreds of, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, hundreds
Yeah,
of startups there, and
easily.
that's one of many events over the course of the year. And I literally have empathy for those folks having been close to advisors. It's for some, it's make or break. Um, on the one hand, I felt like, the needle in the haystack. Like there was somebody out there who had something that was truly differentiating, but it's hard to tell because they may be getting out marketed by someone else. So um, I, I still think, and I think that gets worse in a world of AI. I also think, where people are trying to solve niche problems. And if I'm the CIO or the CTO, it might even be the needle in the haystack or the silver bullet, but it's niche and it's got to fight its way into my tech stack and go through all of that. Are those hurdles the same as they've always been in your mind, or are they getting more challenging if you're a founder?
The hurdles, the number of hurdles that you must clear remains the same. What those hurdles look like and how you navigate them is changing. But to your point about there being, and you're not exaggerating, literally hundreds of AI solutions. One thing I love about supply chain is because it is so complex and so fragile, there will be endless opportunities for disruption, for improvement, for some smart Georgia Tech student to say, "Hey, I've got an idea and I think I could solve a painful point." The challenge we also have within supply chain is spreadsheets work pretty well, and email works pretty well, and phone calls work pretty well. They're not the most efficient, but they do work. And if your job in an organization is to ensure that trucks arrive and depart on time, if it's working, you're reluctant to go and adopt a new process that may not work. So it's not just having the smartest solution, it's the adoption piece. And I think that's where a lot of founders fall short. I talked to a lot of really smart students here at Georgia Tech, smart students across the state. Was just at Georgia Southern 2 weeks ago. The incredible work they're doing with their supply chain program, and they'll come and say, "Hey, it would be so much easier for people who, for example, are a dispatcher if they use the solution I built." And my question is always, "Well, why don't they?" what is the reason that they're not taking the more efficient route? And part of it is the risk of what if it doesn't work? I'm not going to get fired if my boss says, well, what happened to the shipment? And I say it's in the spreadsheet. But if I try and roll out a new solution and it breaks, and now I can't tell you where a shipment is or if it's been delivered, that's the wrong answer. So there's an aversion to risk that seems unnecessary because everything about supply chain is risk. Getting an item from the other side of the world onto the shelf of a Home Depot store is pretty complex in and of itself. Why would I add more complexity? And certainly, why would I add a solution that hasn't been vetted at scale? So that's something that for the best founders, if they can understand how do I get adoption? How do the example I give is I love predictive analytics. This is an area where AI has been strong for a long time. If I'm responsible for all the machines operating in a 1 million square foot facility, if I show up 7 a.m. and I have an email and it says, go look at machine 14. So I grab my cup of coffee and I walk out there and I see machine 14, there's a bolt coming loose. And I tighten it and that machine doesn't break down. And so production is not hindered because of its breaking down. I don't care how that information got to me. All I know is I didn't have to look at 100 machines in sequence to find the problem. I went to the actual problem and solved it and prevented. Now, then there's the problem of you don't get credit for preventing a problem. You get more credit for fixing a problem. So you'll have to take that up with your manager. But that's to me the worker in a supply chain environment. If you have a solution, they don't care about how brilliant it is. They don't care about how complex and deep and cutting edge it is. All they want to know is, will this make my job easier? Will it make my time? Uh, will it make the use of my time more efficient? That's what they're going to care about. So understanding how that end user is going to deploy your solution and how it benefits him or her in their everyday job, that's the true opportunity to me, even more than just building a brilliant solution for supply chain.
Well, you mentioned agents, and I know you may have some thoughts on that in terms of, hype versus reality. Is that a game changer in terms of what things are going to be like over the next couple of years? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm firmly in the camp that it is a reality. It is working well. It's not perfect. There are absolutely going to be issues with it, but humans are incredibly valuable, and employing humans is a significant cost in any operation. So, as a ruthless capitalist, I want my team to be doing the tasks that are of the highest value to the organization. And if there's a task that is repetitive but important, for example, getting a signed bill of lading over to the customer so they have that proof of delivery, that just doesn't require a human. But when there's an issue with the delivery, or when there's the opportunity to say, hey, customer, we once again delivered successfully. Your previous solution always had a challenge with the lane between Atlanta and Jacksonville, and we're executing flawlessly. Let's talk about growing our partnership. I want humans in high value roles and removing those redundant but important tasks. Agents are doing a good job with that. Uh, yes, there are absolutely going to be jobs that are lost as a result. But to me, it's not about losing the job or eliminating job. It's about shifting those human resources to more valuable tasks. And I think that's absolutely going to be the case with AI. You'll hear a worst case scenario, the entry level coder, right? A computer science degree 3 years ago was the thing to get, and now there's a challenge getting entry level positions. That will work itself out. Uh, I do believe that there's going to be some pain in the middle, but we will get there because eventually humans will continue to be a higher value offering, and we do need humans in the loop. I know that's self-serving, but I believe it's true.
Yeah, we published an article under one of our banners recently, and it's this whole case around, what's the implication of new technology on work and jobs and that type of thing. And the reality is, I I wouldn't want work to look like looked when I came out of school. Okay. It's just a function of time, right? From a year to year basis. I mean, I literally I was a transportation planner, and that job, by a lot of rights today, is not a real fun job, right? Um, Anything we can do to make that job easier to to get good people into that role and to keep good people in a role like that, um, I think there's a lot of runway for that, that type of change. And again, given that we're in the supply chain and logistics world, I'm hoping, back to your point of having the conversations, that the persona of these frontline, people making it happen, working. I mean, they're one step from the front line, but I supervise drivers. Those drivers were on the road, they were at the dock. Um, and anything I could do to make the driver's life easier and make my life easier as their supervisor or planner, I'm for. Um, so I'm hopeful that this technology gets embedded to the point where it starts to move the needle. But I don't know, back to the founder and the investor world, is solving that need interesting to people who invest in technology like this?
It is. I mean, there is, as we've discussed, there is the rush to AI is going to be everything and someone's going to win. So I'm placing a huge bet on this company to win. But it's not that binary. I know technology is zeros and ones, but it truly is not that binary. What we're seeing is so for folks in the call, you've been in the industry, you've got experience, you're hearing about AI, not sure how your organization is going to approach it, how they're deploying it. But I can say for you individually, one of the things I appreciate about AI, particularly the LLMs, the chat GPTs of the world, is you can go in there and start tinkering with it. And you can start asking questions. And it is, as with everything in life, the quality you put in is the quality you get out. So learning the ability to ask questions or prompts of these LLMs is going to only make you better at your job. Now, your organization may have a policy; they don't want you to use it. Work stuff. That's fine. Please remember that ChatGPT is open source. You put a piece of information in, it becomes part of an answer to someone else's question. So I think that's one thing that people don't fully appreciate. If you dump your company's P&L into ChatGPT, that data may show up in someone else's answer. So don't say that to warn you, but just as with everything, be aware that what you're sharing is possibly going to be shared again. But so people who are not clear, hey, how's AI going to impact my role? What's my job going to look like in a couple of years? You can, as soon as this call is over, and not a second before, because there's so much value here, you can jump on ChatGPT and start asking questions. You want to plan a trip. You want to take the family on vacation for a week. Here's my budget. Here are the dates I've got in mind. Here's what we would like to do. What do you got? And you will learn how to ask better questions to get better information back. And that's where I see AI having an immediate deployment within supply chain. And so for everyone out there who's not sure how to use it, start there. Ask some questions and or any of the LLMs. I'm not pushing ChatGPT. Uh, but I think you don't need to go back to school and get a 4 year degree or an advanced degree to learn how to utilize AI and understand its capabilities and limitations. And to me, that's amazing. Just think of it as Wi Fi, right? We no longer have to sit in a cafe plugged into the wall to access the internet. That's a good thing.
Yeah, we did in our January webinar, we were in the space of AI, and I kind of had a 12-month forward prediction. And I just did a refresher for an audience today. And what I was surprised to see is all my 12-month predictions had come to pass in less than 12 months. So the pace of change is super high. And again, I try to think of that our audience, whether it's a learner, whether it's a startup or whatever, um, you know, in your mind, if you kind of move the clock forward, what is your coaching for people? Things to keep an eye on, things they should be doing or not. And is this pace of change for you like, hey, listen, I've lived in the world of technology. This is just what it is, or is this something different?
There's absolutely aspects to your point with AI where it is going so fast. And by the time you're done tweeting out your hot take on AI, the tweet is obsolete because AI has made the leap past what you predicted. That's going to happen with AI. We also see what are we on now? ChatGPT 5.
Mhm.
They rolled it out and everyone shrugged because there was no meaningful improvement over the previous version. And they're kind of sitting around shrugging uh, because they're trying to make the next leap, but it's really hard. So you will see moments of rapid progress, and something you thought would take a year happens in 2 months. And there will be other things where they're going to promise you that by early 2026, we'll be doing this. And it will be 2036, and someone will not have figured it out by then. So it's going to move at different paces, but AI is omnipresent. Again, it is not a solution, it is absolutely a tool and a resource. But as I say, AI will never unclog your toilet. So if you want career certainty, be a plumber. Uh, there's just no solution that AI can do to unclog your toilet.
We have questions that have come in, so I'm going to shape a couple things based on the connections. Um, as a follow-on to your point, I'm a strong believer that context is a big differentiator, and we educationally pushed our students over the last 10 years to really bet on analytics, and we started to hear the feedback from our industry clients, and they said these kids are strong analytically, but they have no context, right? They have not ever worked anywhere, so they really can't provide the level of insight that we need. And I think that's kind of thematic for you. You told me once before, I don't want to hear about a startup from a consultant. I need somebody who's been at the coal face of the problem, which kind of sounds similar. Um, what is your advice to the students who, are like, while I'm still in school, how do I get that coal face kind of experience so that I can really make the most of my education and then maybe actually come up with a relevant idea?
It is not hard these days to get a job in a warehouse, understand what it's like to lift the 50-pound box and carry it through a warehouse in Georgia in the middle of the summer. It's miserable. And driving trucks is hard. Making deliveries. I mean, and how many times have we seen an Amazon driver staring at a device, looking around, trying to figure out, do I go this way, that way? All these things are incredibly hard. We take them for granted because I'll order something this evening and it'll be on my porch when I wake up tomorrow morning. But everything that's required to make that happen is difficult. And if you haven't gone out and carried a box in a warehouse, driven a truck, made a delivery, you're missing out on that knowledge and that lived experience because you can put it on the board and say, I've got a brilliant solution. But until you go out in the warehouse and walk around and realize, oh, this won't work because there's a load bearing column here. And so the system I just built needs to have access through that load bearing column, but that load bearing column is mission critical. So living it, it will also give you an appreciation for how difficult these jobs are. We went through COVID, and if you were a white collar worker, COVID was great. You got to sit at home, drink your own coffee, didn't have to commute. But for the folks who did the work to keep the country running, to keep the world moving, they had to go into the warehouse. They had to go into the hospital. They had to do that work. And so there's a massive gap in terms of the people who are doing the work and making things happen that we take for granted. So anything you can do to get a little taste of it and appreciate the difficulty of it, and then it's not as simple as just drawing it on a board, that will be invaluable. As well as getting a degree from an incredible institution like Georgia Tech.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was in school, UPS would put ads up for people around holidays to come in and provide surge capacity. And I mean, I knew people who did that. Um, I know the percentage of students who work even during the school year, so set aside a summer internship, is pretty high. And then I have encouraged, and to your point, get a shift somewhere, work one or two shifts a week so you could still focus on your schoolwork. And it's not the job you're going to do forever. My son stocked shelves during school, and he concluded he didn't want to stock shelves for the rest of his life, but he probably learned something from there. So I think that's great coaching and advice um, for our audience. We've also got folks who are in the startup world, like again, at the original or the early phase of it. How do they get access to kind of the ecosystem like you referenced, whether or not it's ATDC or another? How does somebody present themselves and say, give me a shot, or give me some support so I can cultivate what I'm working on?
Uh, First thing is showing up. LinkedIn is an incredible tool. You can connect with people all over the world. You can find someone who has expertise in an area you're interested in. That's great. But you need to show up, whether it's one of the great events SCL puts on. We have Entrepreneurs Night here at ATDC every third Thursday of the month. It's free to come. So you got to show up. You need to be able to explain what it is you're working on. And it's fine if you don't have it all worked out. I always push founders to come up with that 7-second elevator pitch. Give me an overview of the problem, the solution, how you either make money or the pain that how you bring value if it's a customer you're talking to. So showing up is critical. Having conversations, being brave, going up to a stranger, shaking hands, hearing about their solution or what they do, asking open-ended questions. Look, the best book I can advise anyone to read when it comes to understanding humans is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's 100 years old, talk about themselves. So anything you can do to get someone talking is a win. And they're going to like you a whole lot more. And they'll also give you pretty helpful information too. So show up, ask questions, be curious, listen. Don't just go in with the agenda if you want to talk at them or tell them about your brilliant idea. But that's part of customer discovery thing I mentioned earlier is you float it out. Someone say it'll never work. It's terrible. Now, that's why you talk to 200 people because that first person may not be right. Uh, and it's also, and this is something, Chris, as you know, I was a drill sergeant in the Army. My favorite line from the drill sergeant creed is, "I will never ask a soldier to perform a task I would not do myself." And so that's the reason why I've never suggested anyone jump out of an airplane because I'm not going to do it unless it's crashing. But for me, one of the things that we bring that I think is so critical is you have to have lived it. You have to have those scars. You have to know what you're talking about from an experience standpoint, even if it is that summer job where you stack cans of peas on shelves and realize you didn't want to do that for the rest of your life. Uh, those things are so critical, and that authenticity will absolutely come through. People will get it, and your ability to understand and listen, tying back to showing up. These in-person interactions still have great value. It's easy in technology to live behind a keyboard, but I promise you the real information is out there in the world, and it's people who have that information, the most valuable information.
All right, Alex, we're hitting the home stretch. One or two other messages that you want to make sure you convey to the audience today before we close the show.
Uh, it is really hard to start something, and your chance of success is not great, but it is an incredibly valuable process. And if you're paying attention, the things you will learn. I always say, my career in startups is a run-on sentence. There are no periods; it's just commas. The period comes when they put me in the ground. Uh, so you got to be brave. You got to be curious. Be kind. I don't say that casually, but treat people as you want to be treated. Like that matters. Um, and so I think the just willingness to start and to take that leap is so valuable. And that leap may be getting off this call and trying out ChatGPT for the first time. It may be taking that technology that your organization has rolled out, you don't really understand, saying, all right, I'm going to dig in and figure this thing out because if it was important to someone up the chain, whether or not I can find value in it, I need to at least understand it so I can talk about it and say, hey, this works well, this doesn't. But that courage, that leap is going to be one of the hardest things you do, but it's worth it. And the bad news is, after you've done that hardest thing, everything else that comes after is even harder if you're actually building something or growing or trying to advance your career. But it is always worth it.
All right, last one for me. If we have this same discussion 12 months from now,
God willing.
what are your one or two, three prediction bets that you'll bet on that will have come to fruition 12 months from now? I'm not sure what I would say, but I'm curious what you got on that.
So I think the biggest opportunity we have around AI right now is because it's been discussed. ChatGPT launches in November 2022. Everyone becomes aware of AI, but it's been around long enough now, at least in the public view, where people are like, I think I should know more about it than I do, but now I'm afraid to ask. So my one prediction is there will be a greater focus on bringing people into the conversation around AI and not making them feel like Oh, what do you mean you don't know how to use AI within your organization? That's ridiculous. Most people don't. So if you don't, awesome. We're all on the same page. So one of the predictions is there'll be this greater acceptance of, yeah, I don't know what to do with it either. Can we talk? Second prediction is the promise that all our problems will go away and be solved by AI will never come true. Uh, it's just not going to happen. So we can meet 12 months, 12 years, 12 centuries from now. AI will remain a work in progress. And three, I think the embracing of I don't need Chris to forward an email with a bill of lading attached anymore. I can put Chris on a higher value task. He will enjoy it more, he'll feel more valuable, and he'll bring more value. I think leadership is going to really embrace that, and the best workers and team members will embrace that mindset as well. Why forward a bill of lading when I could do something that brings real value and makes me more valuable? Most people can forward an email. Can I assess what needs to happen when something goes wrong? Or can I take advantage of the opportunity when something goes right? That's where the humans are going to come in. That's going to be the career opportunity for a lot of people.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, kind of if I would say to build on your point, um, if you haven't been leveraging these tools to drive personal productivity to create space and time, that's probably the biggest no-brainer that's out there right now. And I am encouraged and hopeful that we'll see in the next 12 months more tangible, real-world examples that people can see and say, my company has that problem. If that can be done, we need to go get that done. And maybe then that's where we'll start to see the visible progress that, I think in the least of the world supply chain, we'd all like to see.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And that's exciting because we'll see greater efficiency, better results, and people will be more productive and happier and also less afraid of AI, which I think is key.
Awesome. All right, Alex, time goes fast. I appreciate it. As always, you and I have done a number of events together on both sides of the coin. As always, thank you. And we will see. Maybe we'll put it down for 12 months today and we'll do it again. I know we've got a couple more slides at the end that'll highlight what we've got coming up next. So I don't know, Alex, if you can just cycle
Yep.
through these because we end up talking more about them. All right. I do want to highlight our Gen AI class in supply chain, October 6th through 8th. You can come see us live in Savannah, or you could take that class virtually, and we're going to do a deep dive. And so we want to highlight that to folks. We've also got lean warehousing coming up that will also be virtual, and our world-class sales and ops class coming up. And so, as always, if you or your team is interested, please hit the link or reach out to us. And or if you have interest in any of these on a custom basis, reach out to us as well. All right. Next month, excited to have another dear friend and cohort of ours, Chris Carter, who leads our project management practice at Georgia Tech, one of our most successful lifetime learning offerings after our online masters. We're going to have an interesting discussion, as you can see here, and it's really on what's the latest in project management. And it's always staggered me that large scale projects don't always go well. And, people don't use the disciplines of project management. And Chris and his team are exceptional at that. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. So hit that 2D barcode, sign up today, send to your friends. I think this is another one that will be a wonderful way to spend your lunch hour 4 weeks from today. So, Alex, again, thank you so much. And
Thank you, Chris.
until we see each other again.